I think I'm just trying to top myself, and whenever you're just trying to top yourself instead of being creative, you end up with really generic movie sequels.
Yes, exactly.
Segue.
Really
Hello.
forced shit.
Much like this opening. Hello. Welcome to the Waffle Press Movie Podcast. I'm your host, Diego Crespo. With me today to continue a fun Shark Week retrospective on the Jaws series is Matthew Garingo. Matt, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing peachy.
Well, why is that? Peachy why?
Because I just got some pizza. So,
Oh, awesome.
yeah, fuck everyone. And Armageddon was on at the pizza place. So,
Oh, okay. Is that a positive or a negative?
I don't know.
Well, that's good to hear. I'm glad you're doing peachy.
At least it wasn't Deep Impact.
What's the matter with Deep Impact?
It sucks. That's just that's a problem that film has to overcome, is that it sucks.
You know what? Fair enough. You know what movie doesn't suck?
What?
Fucking Jaws. Jaws
Yeah,
is still.
man.
After that episode, I went back and watched it 2 more times.
Yeah.
It's just, it's so fucking good, and there's so much more I want to add to that episode, but
It's already.
Yeah, it's there. It's done.
It's clocking in at 9 hours, I'm guessing.
I trimmed it down from a year, so it's all good. Well, you know what's not the best movie?
Mm.
In all the vast and unknown depths of the ocean, how could there have been only one?
All right.
Oh boy, Jaws 2.
This is a weird little movie. It's not weird in context or anything like that. Just like it's one of those sequels that doesn't need to exist at all.
Mm-hmm.
It is just a business decision because the first Jaws made like infinite money for its time.
Yeah.
And then it's I don't feel that excited to talk about it until
That's the thing.
the later portion of it. There are specific things I want to talk about it with that I'm excited, but like as a whole, I'm not excited to revisit this for a discussion.
Well, here's the thing. Anyone listening, if you haven't seen Jaws 2, like, of course, I hope you've seen Jaws. If not, what the fuck? But if you haven't seen Jaws 2, go out, watch Jaws 2, and then try and comprehend that it's the best Jaws sequel. Because the only saving thing is that the sequels just get worse and worse, so it kind of elevates Jaws 2. Because fuck is it a downgrade from Jaws. I mean, good lord.
It's like they get astronomically worse from one another.
Mm-hmm.
The quality decline is unbelievable. Like if you thought the Alien movies got bad, like it's fucking nothing compared to this.
Yeah. And I mean, and this is just, but a part of it is that this is a product of a time where sequels weren't really a thing. Like, major franchise. Like now we're so used to any movie that does moderately well gets a sequel these days because that's how the business works. But back then, like, there weren't too many franchises. I mean, like Godfather it was Godfather Part 2, there's the Planet of the Apes films. There's the Sting 2, which is just terrible. So no one, this is even before Empire Strikes Back. So, like, the idea of sequels is a new thing. Blockbuster sequels, anyway.
Yeah.
And so what you get with this franchise is a studio that just doesn't know what to do with its franchise. Not that there probably were many options, but, I don't think you could have done a real good Jaws 2, even if you tried as hard as possible.
I don't want to pivot too hard, but I bet if Jaws had been made today, and it was as good as it was then, right?
Mm.
Obviously, the sequel gets more action heavy. It goes the Aliens route because every movie like this goes the Aliens route now with bigger and more. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I wonder how that would work instead of, because none of the Jaws sequels do this, where they add more sharks. It's just one shark every time.
Yeah, that's actually a direction you'd think they'd maybe go in, but they never got to it, I guess. Actually, no. There's technically 2 sharks in Jaws 3.
I don't remember this at all, so
Don't worry. But there's only one that's actually killing people.
Oh, fucking stupid.
You'll see when we get to it. It's such a stupid like plot cul-de-sac, but whatever. We'll have to save that for Jaws 3. But the thing is, Jaws 2 kind of does do the aliens thing where it's Jaws, but a little bigger, and bigger in all the wrong ways. You know?
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think. I think more people die in this movie than Jaws, and there is more action in it. And this movie goes to ridiculous lengths to try and like make it seem like the shark is more intimidating than the first shark. Like it gets scarred so it looks like, a gnarly monster shark.
Oh, see, it's so B movie.
Yeah, and like, there's the part like a dead orca whale, washes up. And it's like, oh, the shark, would have to be a massive shark to take this thing down. And like but it's all like boring ways to try and make the shark intimidating. Like the shark doesn't really do anything that scary. And it looks terrible. That's the other thing. There's a shot in this movie where it like rams up against someone's boat with its mouth wide open, and it comes like right at the camera, and it looks just awful. You know what scene I'm talking about?
I know exactly what scene you're talking about, because I wrote down, in theory, this should be like, that's the money shot. Like, I think that's the one they use in all the trailers. So like when they put it back in the film, I don't know if this is true, but when they put it in the film, like the quality like drops significantly for those couple frames. Because they just kept showing it all the time, and they're like, "Oh fuck!" But yeah, the shark looks really bad there. But that should be a holy shit moment that like makes you jump out of your chair.
But there's no holy shit moments in this movie.
No, God no.
It comes close once, but it's not even a scene with the shark. So, it's the scene where Brody goes out and finds the dead body on the bit of wood that's out there, because it's just a really weird scene. Like, why it doesn't totally make sense that Brody would go out there, but it's kind of it's a little bit of a good shock moment. There's no Ben Gardner's head popping out, but it's a nice little moment. Other than that, the movie's terrible.
See, I don't feel that it's terrible. I just don't think it's very good.
I guess. I mean, it's serviceable enough. You can watch it. It's only like bad on rewatch. Like, it's not a movie I'd revisit that often.
I have no interest in ever rewatching it again, but I don't hate it. And
yeah,
it only really suffered. I mean, it's not that well directed. I just think it's like borderline competent at times, but it really pales in comparison to Jaws, which is one of the best movies ever made. So it's like I don't want to say it's totally unfair, because when you make a sequel to a movie that good, you have to know that you got to put in some quality there. You can't just like pump out some bullshit. I mean, you could, and people will go see it, but if you want to keep making that money, you have to really try. And the problem is that often studios don't.
Well, honestly, Jaws 2 is kind of a new breed of movie. When you think about it, it's like the first really like, since the studio system collapsed, to be like a design by committee studio film. Like there's no one vision going on in this movie. I mean, not that like most movies are, like all movies are a collaborative process, but this is very much a product. And it's the first movie to really do that in a long time, because blockbusters are now a thing after Jaws. So, it's a studio going, we want Jaws, but again. And so you can't get a director to be like, well, like maybe we do a more psychological film. I mean, one of the ideas, you could do a Jaws movie that didn't even have a shark in it. Like, as like a real just character study film. but no studio wants that because they want the shark, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know anything about the production history of this movie?
I know slightly a little bit, but I want to bounce off that really quick before we do that.
Okay.
You know what would make this movie so much better? If it's the first half is just that psychological thriller, like the whole thing being psychological and not having a shark. That's really cool, but obviously not want to do that. So the first half is just whether or not Brody is paranoid about the shark attacks. Still, like he's suffering like PTSD or something. And then there is a shark, but no one believes him because he's been acting like a whack job for so long now. You know?
Yeah, if you made this like a Rosemary's Baby type film, where you know, like he's constant, like, and you make the audience as paranoid as him, you know, where like you can't really tell what you're seeing, you know, like maybe it's really there or maybe it isn't, like maybe it really is in his head, and then that scene with the body that I talked about, you know, that I said is the one almost genuine scare moment in the movie could be the turning point of the film. You know, that's the moment where we suddenly realize, oh, there really is a shark. You know, like that would be the bridge. And then what does Brody do when he's the only man that, you know, is like can fight this thing at this point? But they didn't do that. I mean, a good thing you could have done would be like, you know, you could bring Richard Dreyfuss back, who said no to this movie. And you could have had him even disagree with Brody. You know, like that would have been an interesting moment. If like even Dreyfuss is like, hey man, I think you're losing it. And then have Brody be one man standing by himself. But I mean, yeah, there's a great movie buried in that, but they didn't do that.
Fuck nope.
Mostly because there's no real great vision going on here.
Yeah. Spielberg said, like originally way back during the production or like pre-production, that like making a sequel is like a cheap Carney trick or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And even he wasn't interested, but I think that was more like the production struggle that he had and like the help.
Yeah, I think a lot of the I think the fact that making Jaws was a complete hell maybe dissuaded him a little bit.
Did you hear about the two sequel ideas that he discussed at one point, though?
Well, I know there was the Indianapolis prequel that supposedly Spielberg wrote a draft on his own. There was the production of Jaws 2 is very rocky, and at one point they reached out to him at the beginning and he said no, and then towards like the middle of pre-production they reached out to him again and he said, well, let me try and write this Indianapolis script, which was there's a couple people tried to do the Indianapolis story and the studio said no because they wanted another Jaws movie. They didn't want an Indianapolis movie. But I don't know what other one he might have done.
Well, he didn't partake in it, but it was like some old interview where he mentioned that the studio was plotting to do a story that involved the kids of Quentin Brody hunting a new shark.
Mm.
Yeah, and that's it. That's like the only blurb on that possible story.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah, that's
especially considering that it's like 3 years. This movie came out like 3 years after the first Jaws. But so I guess it would have to take place in the future. That's old studio thinking, though, because monster movies pull that shit all the time. Like if there's a sequel to a monster movie that came out the next year, it's always set like 15 years later. Like they used to do that shit all the time. So that's pretty bad. But do you know about the first director for this movie?
I can't say that I do.
Do you even know there was a first director?
Yeah, it was. I always want to say Hitchcock. Was it Hancock?
I think it's Hancock. I don't remember his name. I'm sorry.
Okay.
All right. So the script for this was written by a guy named Carl Gottlieb and Howard Sackler. Sackler did the first draft of Jaws, the first Jaws, but wanted to be uncredited because I don't think he really believed in it.
Oh.
And he also knew he was only going to be available for the first draft. So he was like, look, I don't want to put my name on this because I'm not really going to be able to follow through with it. And then Carl Gottlieb rewrote his script And then there were constant rewrites happening on Jaws by various people. Even Spielberg did a couple drafts, but Carl Gottlieb gets the main credit. So for this one, it was both Sackler and Gottlieb. Sackler wrote at the beginning. He tried to do the Indianapolis script. The studio said no, but then Sackler wrote a draft of Jaws 2. The first director they got wanted to do a more depressing film, I guess would be the right word. He wanted to do the logical follow-up to Jaws, which is that after the events of Jaws, the town of Amity is like about to go bankrupt. Like businesses are closing, everyone's leaving. They can't, like no one's coming back to the beaches because of all the bad publicity from the first movie. That's the only real details I know about the script, is that it was going to have a bit of a darker tone, but that the studio was constantly trying to change what he was going for, which he resisted. Lorraine Gray, who plays Brody's wife in the script, was married to Sid Sheinberg, who was the head of Universal at the time. And Sid Sheinberg kept saying that his wife needed a bigger role. And the fucking director was like, fuck that. And no offense to Lorraine Gray, but she's not a great actress. She tries her best, but she was never super great. She's all right, but she's not like a carry this movie type person. And I guess his refusal to give her more scenes led to him getting fired. According to him, I guess he was very antagonistic with the producers and the studio and the writer. Very similar to a certain situation going down in Hollywood right now. So it's interesting that one of the first commissioned blockbuster sequels is playing out like a very modern blockbuster sequel, spinoff, whatever. So that guy was fired, and then they brought in another guy who directed this movie, I guess. I guess if you want to call it what he did.
This guy, Janot Swark.
Sure.
There's like a 90% chance that's not how you pronounce that.
He's a French director, I believe.
Yes, who would later go on to direct Supergirl, Santa Claus the movie.
Mm-hmm. And if you want to see some very uneven film, check out Supergirl and Santa Claus the movie.
There's some French stuff in there.
And he also did a movie about bugs that like explode.
Oh yeah, Bug.
Yeah,
I didn't see that one. I missed it.
I've seen that movie. It's 70s. But whatever. Somehow the producer saw that and said, "Get this guy for Jaws 2." The actual truth is, no, he did a bunch of Night Gallery episodes, and a lot of the people who worked on Jaws worked on Night Gallery, so they're like, "Hey, we can get this guy."
That's interesting.
And Spielberg also worked on Night Gallery, so I guess they were hoping they could strike lightning twice. Get an untested director and give him a big movie. And also, but then when they brought this guy on, they were going to rewrite basically the entire script, but they had to shoot something. So the guy just said, his logic was, well, I'll shoot some action scenes for the movie, and that'll take a while, and you guys just write the script around these scenes. And so we'll have time to, flesh out all the characters and stuff. So I think the scene with the what is it? The fucking boat that blows up.
Oh yeah, I think that's the second kill, right?
Yeah, it's the second kill. They basically filmed that whole scene just so they could buy time to rewrite the script. And Carl Gottlieb locked himself in like a hotel room for like a month and just rewrote the whole movie.
Oh.
And put more focus on the teenage characters.
I wouldn't call it focus, but okay.
Well, his idea, I think, was he wanted to do American Graffiti mixed with Jaws.
That is.
I mean,
that's an idea.
I don't know if he's ever said that, but that's the vibe I get. Like, a bunch of kids, they're like, instead of cruising with cars, they're cruising with boats. Why not?
That feels like a Max Landis thing. Like, oh, I'll take this genre and this genre, and it'll be like kooky fun. But then there won't be like any ideas driving it. It's just like, oh, wouldn't that be cool? And then it's like never cool.
Yeah. Yeah, basically. Like it'll hit all the beats your script is supposed to do, which is what this movie does. It hits all the right beats. It's just not terribly interesting.
I mean, I guess for like a slasher movie, you could do a lot worse, but you sure as shit could do a lot better too.
Yeah. But whatever the fuck.
Okay. You brought up a good point of that you think the direction is the big fault of the movie.
Okay, I'm just going to break this down real quick.
Do it.
I'm going to talk about the whole opening of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I would say maybe the first 5 minutes of the movie, because it's basically a microcosm of everything wrong with it.
Go for it.
So, for one thing we haven't talked about is that they fucking got John Williams back somehow. He did a completely original score with, the Jaws theme in it, of course. But it's a different score, and it's pretty good. It's got a weird dreamlike feel to it. You know what I'm talking about, right? The opening with like the.
It's like the end of the first Jaws. After the shark blows up, it goes like yeah. Like that feels dreamlike. This feels like if you watch these back to back, they like connect almost just through the music that way.
Yeah, it's almost like John Williams was the only guy who knew what he was doing, because he, I think, knew what direction the movie maybe should have gone.
He should have consulted on the script.
Yeah. And all right, and so the opening scene of this movie is two scuba divers going to the wreck of the Orca, the boat from the first movie. And if I read this in a script, this would be a good opening for this movie. The whole thing works on the script of scuba divers are checking out the destruction of the first boat. It ties it into the last movie. And then they're attacked by a shark, and then you only can see the attack from the flashing of the camera, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I read that, I'd be like, oh, that's pretty cool. Watching it is a completely different experience because it's so flat and boring. And even the camera flashing, it's more just constantly cutting back to the camera and not really taking advantage of the camera flashes. And we see the shark almost immediately. And it's a fucking, it's stock footage. And noticeable stock footage at that. And it's way too bright. Think of all the underwater scenes in Jaws. There's kind of a creepy, otherworldly feel to it. And this one is just like, hey, look at everything. It's like the director was like, turn out the lights, I want to see everything. And then even then, they show the shot when this whole scene's over. They show their guy's boat just sitting there being like, oh, now there's an abandoned boat out there, the eeriness of the stillness. And it makes you appreciate how well Spielberg shot the ocean in the first Jaws movie, because it's so bright and the light is just reflecting off the water really badly. And it's just kind of like your grandparents' home video of their trip to Hawaii. It's not very interesting. And then we immediately go from that to, Chief Brody. And it's the movie is literally trying to do scenes from Jaws, which is, Brody driving through the town, and he goes on that same ferry we saw. And it's basically all those scenes that we already saw in the first Jaws, just done wrong. It's a really great example of just what happens if you just put the camera in a slightly different spot. You change the entire vibe of a movie. Just if your lighting is just slightly different, if your camera angles are just a little different, you can fuck up an entire movie. And it's just a generic scene of now, suddenly Brody is oh, he's late to his wife's thing because he works too hard. Like, fuck you, movie. Like, it's just, that's like the most generic way to introduce a character ever. And then we go to this hotel that's opening. We get the basic idea that somehow Mayor Vaughn is still in power. Like, there wasn't a fucking immediate recall election against him. Like, how the fuck did that motherfucker get reelected? I understand American politics are really fucked up and there's all sorts of corrupt people, but you need to explain that more.
They don't even bring that up.
Yeah. No, it's never brought up. I mean, there's this real estate deal going on and that's basically forgotten about halfway through the movie. You know, like there's the tension in the first movie of like, you know, keeping the beaches open, and the beaches are eventually closed, but there's no like, the real estate deal never falls through, I don't think. It's just kind of like Brody almost fucks it up and that's it. And then suddenly, oh, he goes and kills another shark. It's a plot that goes really nowhere. It's literally just they went like, well, what do we do instead of trying to keep the beaches open? I guess they're opening a new hotel.
I really wish they had gone. Well, I wish a lot of things for this movie, but I wish they had gone with that idea now that Amity is suffering, like economically. That's cool. That feels not quote unquote realistic, but like the next step in the series.
Well, there are two ways you can take a sequel to Jaws, which is one to follow up on the characters. Specifically Brody, because he's the only guy you got back. Because Roy Scheider was stuck in a contract he couldn't get out of. He really didn't want to do this movie, which is weird to think about because he's the only one trying in it. So you have to do like a natural progression of the plot, but then you can't recreate Jaws. You have to do a different plot than the first Jaws. It has to be a different beast. And that's not what the studio wanted. And the only other option is to just take the basic idea of a shark attacking people and put it in a completely new setting with new characters. And the studio can never wants to separate those two ideas. Like we'll see in the sequels when they're all about Brody's kids, like why the fuck make it about them? Like just do another shark movie if that's what you want. But the studio can never figure that out. It's so generic. It's just frustrating.
Well, I mean, it feels like the movie that, all right, like say Jaws again came out today, and we hear all about the production problems, and you know, obviously everyone is assuming it's going to be a miserable failure. Then it comes out and it's pretty good. But what you're worried about is basically watching a movie like this, where it's not unwatchable, but it is modern blockbuster filmmaking, or what modern blockbuster filmmaking often feels like, where it's soulless.
It's a movie you see, you tolerate, and then you forget about as soon as you leave the theater. This movie has no lasting power. You'll remember maybe a couple moments, but that's about it.
It's what every Jaws ripoff wants to be.
Yeah,
or but what is not wants to be. Nothing wants to be this.
But Jaws ripoffs are more memorable than this. I mean,
did you see The Shallows?
I did see The Shallows.
Okay, I think The Shallows is fucking great. So I will champion that one as a great Jaws ripoff.
No, Jaws is The Shallows is fine. I mean, I'm not like I wasn't over the moon about it, but I did like it.
Fair.
Yeah, go see The Shallows if you really need to see a shark movie. Don't see Open Water because Open Water sucks.
I saw that a long time ago, and I have no feelings about it now. So
Open Water was like they advertised it like I think Leonard Maltin said it's the scariest shark movie since Jaws. So I was like, all right, game on, motherfucker. And I went to see it, and it just sucked. It's really cheap. It's like it was clearly like a B movie that just got a lot of press. They shot it on like DV cams, and it's not like creative DV cam shooting either. Like there's literally a scene that's supposed to be. They literally try to do a day for night scene, and it's just pitch black, and there's supposed to be lightning, and it's literally just them turning up the light for like half a second. It looks really terrible. But on the other hand, there's a movie called The Host, a South Korean film, monster movie, that the quote on the box was on par with Jaws. And I saw that at a Blockbuster, and I was like, game on, motherfucker. And I rented it, and guess what? It's on par with Jaws. The Host is a really good movie. So check that out if you haven't seen it.
Yes, please. From the director of Snowpiercer, the upcoming Okja, Bong Joon-ho.
Yep.
That guy is fucking awesome.
He's great, and The Host is a great monster movie. Jaws 2 is kind of like Kong Skull Island.
Did you end up watching that?
Yeah.
Sorry.
It wasn't bad, but like I said, it's just like you're like, whatever.
I don't know. Half of it I think is really bad, and then the other half I'm like, there's interesting stuff here. But I think it's better than Jaws 2.
I don't know if I can go that far.
But oddly enough, I wanted to mention it, but I wasn't sure if you had seen Kong Skull Island. So the camera flashing, Kong Skull Island does that too with one of the skull crawlers.
Yeah.
And that is really cool. They don't do a lot with it there either, but that's a really cool way to ratchet up attention in a scene. And no one does anything interesting with that. Why?
Because
visually, anyways.
Well, it's what happens when you give these movies to just talentless people because you just want to sell a product. It's when you go, Kong is guaranteed to net us this much money, so we just have to get a guy who can just drive this thing to completion.
Oh, I don't think Jordan Vogt Roberts is untalented. I think he's got something. I think he needs to work on people talking.
Yes.
That's it. Everything else I really like in the movie.
I think he was fine, but it's just, I mean, Gareth Edwards has his problems, but he makes up for it in a lot of areas. And I don't think the guy who did Kong Skull Island made up for it. Whatever.
It also helps that Larry Fong was his DP on the movie.
Yeah.
I want to see Larry Fong do a shark movie now. There's all these ideas in my head.
I want to see Larry Fong get with a good director.
Thank you.
Because he's kind of not been with great directors.
You don't like Watchmen?
No.
I'm just kidding. I don't.
But here's the thing: that movie gets a lot of credit for its visuals. So credit the right guy. Credit the three people who deserve credit for Watchmen, which is Alan Moore, Dave Gibbs, and Larry Fong.
So Jaws 2 is pretty soulless production committee endeavor, and yet some moments I think are kind of exciting. Not fully like they pull me into it, but I'm like, this is fun for a moment, for individual little moments, like towards the finale when all the kids are on the boat, the American Graffiti kids, as you called them, and they're all just starting to like crash into each other and stuff, and it's not filmed well, but it feels chaotic enough that I kind of get into it, and I don't care about anybody, but I want to see somebody get eaten. And so the moments like that, I think, work well enough.
Well, think about it. If you read that scene in a script, you'd be like, "Oh, that'd be a great scene." And then you give it over to the director who doesn't know what he's doing. And then you get generic, it's just by the numbers. It's just boats crashing into each other. It makes sure you see the right things, but it doesn't really do anything creative with any of it.
It's like a lot of TV direction gets criticized for just showing you everything, but not actually making you feel any way about what you're watching.
It's very television, even modern TV, where it's just two people talking and just have no visual flair at all. Yeah. And then a character is morally ambiguous and people go brilliant.
I bet the shark in Jaws 2 is morally ambiguous.
Yeah. He eats people, but he's doing it to pay for his dad's medical bills or some shit. He's got a code.
It's filmed really poorly. Visually, this movie has nothing to offer. But there is one scene that I like a lot, and it's it's not visually like inspired or anything, but it's after Brody shoots into the ocean and that guy goes, it's just a sea of blue fish. And he's picking up the shells and everyone's walking away on the beach like, oh, this fucking maniac. And his youngest son, I don't remember the name. Is that Mike?
Okay, you call me like a deer in the headlights.
Okay, well, his youngest son walks over.
Sean is the younger one.
Okay, he walks over to help Brody pick up his bullet shells, and it's a nice, touching, sad little scene. And Cam from YS Cinema actually brought that scene up to me, and I was like,
I saw that.
Yeah, and that is a good scene. Rewatching that's a really good scene.
It's a good idea of a scene. I'm sorry. It's the thing, like, literally, that's an interesting idea. It's a good little moment, but it's kind of like, it's just shot, like, it's so bright. It's just like, hey, sunny day. Like, that's the vibe you get from that scene, instead of, like, this is a tragic moment. And, like, honestly, it really makes you appreciate how Spielberg was able to work with all the same elements and get better emotions out of them, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because Spielberg was like shooting with the same lighting, same water, same beaches. Although I believe all the boat stuff was filmed in Florida. And the beach stuff.
The beach stuff was Florida too.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because everyone was like, "Fuck," because the water was so fucking cold. When they tried to film Jaws, they were like, "Fuck it, we're not doing that again." But I know a lot of it was still shot in Martha's Vineyard. Because they got a lot of those people in it are locals, and they got a lot of the same people back. So, which they also do again in Jaws 4, but we'll get to that.
Oh, fucking.
Hey, I just want people to notice. Remember, like, how I couldn't shut the fuck up in the last episode, and now it feels like I'm fucking like on morphine. that kind of sums up Jaws too. I'm like, yeah, the scene with the bullets is good, I guess. I like to see where Brody's making the bullets. That's kind of a cool, like, dark scene. I like the scene when Brody is developing the photo that reveals the shark.
Which again goes well with the whole first half of being a psychological thriller.
Yeah, imagine that, like, if you're an audience waiting with that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
and you can
I was just watching. I was just watching.
Like, oh, sorry.
I was gonna say I was just watching Rear Window the other day, and there's, like, you know, brilliant moments where, like, characters start learning new information, and like that, like, you watch it, you go like, like, watching it, like, even today, it still gets that effect. My little brother had never seen Rear Window, and I was watching it with him, and I could just watch it, like, working on him. And, like, this movie has no moments like that. And it easily could. Just change a couple elements.
And the camera placement, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, I mean, no, just get a different guy.
Yeah.
John Frankenheimer almost did this movie. Fuck, that would have been good.
I'm totally not Googling who that is right now.
John Frankenheimer's fucking one of the greatest directors of all time, you motherfucker.
Oh, okay, Manchurian Candidate. Yeah, all right.
Yeah, but he directed The Island of Dr. Moreau in the 90s. He was the guy they brought in to try and save that production.
Oh, fuck.
But that was towards the end. That was when John Frankenheimer wasn't exactly doing very good. Go see Seconds. Seconds is a fucking awesome movie. Is that him? I might have the wrong movie name.
No, he did it in the 60s.
All right, I just wanted to double check. I was like, oh, fuck, was that someone else?
You don't like reindeer games?
No,
anyway.
But
no,
I do. I like John Frankenheimer, but he kind of fell off towards the end.
But I was gonna say, all right, so you don't see the shark, obviously. The picture still comes in, big shock moment, like halfway through the movie. But you can still do, like, little hints of stuff, like just in passing, people listening on the radio, like another reported drowning or a boating accident, yada yada, right? And then like the whale washes up, and they're talking about how it had to be something big that ate it, and so Brody's the only one that thinks it's a shark or whatever. You still do little inklings of stuff, but you still don't show it.
And well, do do moments where you see something that you think is a shark, but then you see something else like very similar to it that could easily explain away what you just saw. But never say if that's what it was. Like, so, because you have to create in the person's brain, like, there's a logical explanation for it, but I'm pretty fucking sure I just saw a shark. You know? And you got to do that for, like, the first half of the movie. I'm telling you, they should have Rosemary's Babied it. Like, just do what that fucking movie did.
My God.
Because that movie, by the end of that movie, you don't know what you did see and what you didn't see. And that's what makes that movie effective. And I mean, this movie, we would pull the rug out halfway through and be like, oh, there's a shark. Because fuck it, you're gonna need a shark in a Jaws movie. but if you did the first half like that, you could make a different. You know who should have directed this movie? David Lynch.
Oh,
like fucking. I don't even know if Eraserhead was. I don't know if Eraserhead was out, but fucking get David Lynch. Because this is at a time in his career when he could have done a Jaws too. You know, he's doing like the Elephant Man and shit. Like, give him Jaws 2 and just let him do whatever.
And actually, you know what? He did Eraserhead the year before, so
yeah. So, all right, there's an alternate universe where the producers of this movie went and saw Eraser. They're like, we just lost our director. Who do we get to save this film? And they go see a screening of Eraserhead, and they're like, get us David Lynch. And then David Lynch makes one of the greatest film sequels of all time.
Yeah, that's it. It's so hard to talk about this movie because there's just like nothing to latch onto other than like, here's why Steven Spielberg and Jaws 1 is amazing.
It's like literally Jaws 2. All I can say is that Jaws 2 repeats a ton of scenes from Jaws 1, and it's all like weaker. So it's literally an example. Like, so some people try and want to talk about like how Spielberg got lucky with Jaws. That, you know, had shit not gone wrong, he wouldn't have been forced to make a good movie. Like that, oh, it was lightning in a bottle. But Jaws 2 is proof that a lot of the success of Jaws is Steven Spielberg. That's basically it. That's the only value in Jaws 2. Also, I guess there's one scene I totally forgot about that is actually the scariest scene in this movie, which is when that girl gets devoured whole in front of Sean. And we only see the back of it and you only hear the sound. That's a pretty good scene because it's pretty brutal.
I have that in my notes as a favorite scene of mine, but also least favorite because that is arguably the most effective scene in the movie, but it feels a little mean because she's watching over Sean like she's like that's her own kid basically. And
she's the only one of these teenagers who isn't an asshole.
Yeah, and she's the one that dies, like
screaming for life, like just like it's so bad. It's so cruel.
Yeah, it's too much.
Had this movie been the harsher version we're talking about, it would have fit more.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, it's just brutality,
which doesn't sell.
And we're talking about a brutal scene that also features no blood, by the way.
Oh yeah, there's no blood in that scene. She just gets.
I don't think there's any blood in this movie except for one scene.
Okay, it's on the boat with that chick and her boyfriend, right? And he falls off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then he's hanging on to the side of the boat. He comes up for a quick second, and then gets pulled down again. And there's like you get like a quick second of blood. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I don't know. Maybe the studio's like, tone it down.
The last movie. Okay, this is hilarious because think about this. We were talking the last time, like how fucking dark it is that a kid gets eaten and then a geyser of blood gushes out of the
blood
water,
shooting in the air,
and it still doesn't feel as mean-spirited as a scene where there's no blood and you see it happen from behind the shark. So you don't even get the full shot of her entering the shark's mouth.
Yeah,
and it feels meaner here. I wonder why that is.
I don't know. There's another scene of cruelty in Jaws 4, which we'll get to.
Jaws 4 is just straight up fucked up.
Jaws 4 is a really weird movie. We're going to have a lot of fun, though, because there's a lot to laugh at.
That one I'm looking forward to talking about more than I'm watching.
That's the thing. Like this, the next two movies are really bad, but there's a lot to laugh at in them. It's just these fucking movies. Also, I guess we should point out this is the only Jaws movie where the shark doesn't blow up.
Yes, and that is also a cool kill.
It's a cool kill, but it's also like set up like so lamely. But I guess I mean I'll give it a slide because the air tanks in Jaws are set up pretty like you mess around with these things they're gonna blow up. Just so we know that's what's gonna happen. And we only see this power line once in Jaws 2. So yep, there you go. This movie also it lacks a both a Richard Dreyfuss and a Quint. Like this movie needed a scientist character and it needed like a Quint type character. Like Brody's fine and Roy Scheider does a really good job. I love the scene in it when he just freaks out on the city council for not listening to him. He's like, I'm not going through that again. Which is, I guess, his feelings about the movie just coming to the surface. But the only like there's no Quint at all. They don't even try to replicate his character. Like there's an old guy in this who's like kind of a seafaring dude, but he doesn't go anywhere. And the one scientist who shows up is treated with such derision and like is constantly like shitting on Brody. It's such a bad scene. You know the woman I'm talking about?
Yeah. Sorry, I was drinking water. But
well, she's like, Brody's like, some fish took a bite out of this fish, and she's like, orcas are mammals. And you're like, fuck you, lady. And she's like, yeah, it could be a shark. How should I know? I'm just a marine biologist. Like, it's such a bad scene. Like, she should have teamed up with Brody.
Yeah, like, that could have been cool, too. So you have him trying to go after the shark by himself, and he tries to, get another little ragtag team of assholes together. But no one just fits the bill. Like, one, because no one believes him. And two, just because you can't rebuild that sort of connection, like, for an audience, not just, like, in character. I mean, in character, I'm sure that'd be difficult, too, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, one of the last guys got, like, ripped in half in front of you, basically.
Yeah.
And then the other one you thought was dead, and it's just, there's a whole, like, sub-layer of things that would have to go right for that. And so you can make that, like, metatextual. Like, the movie can't figure it out, and the characters can't figure it out. And you have to close it off properly. You can't just like have it be a waste of half an hour or anything. But that would have been interesting too to see Brody go through that. Like he doesn't want to deal with this by himself, and then he has to.
Yeah,
it's at least different.
There's all this shit there for a great movie, and just no. I also there's a horrible shot in this movie. Like after we meet Brody and kind of get caught up with what's going on in his life, where they just cut to the water and you just see the shark fin. It's like, hey, remember, there's a shark in this movie. Like, no shit. Like, why the fuck is that shot there? It's the least intimidating shot in any horror movie ever.
That's a bold statement.
It's just, I mean, I'm just talking about it's such a downgrade from Jaws 1. I mean, fuck.
Yeah.
You want to understand why Jaws 1 is great, watch Jaws 2.
Yeah, like, okay, this is a broad example, but I watched The Book of Henry last week, and I think everyone should watch it, because if you love movies, you need to know how to make one. Mm-hmm. And what that movie shows is that even if you don't know how to make a movie, you can still find funding.
Colin Trevorrow is an example of a director who literally does everything wrong. I mean, I don't think I've seen him do a right thing in a movie yet. I mean, he's a guy in like a couple years, he's going to elevate the Star Wars prequels. I'm not even joking. He's not a competent filmmaker. He has no instincts at all. It's just watch, but I mean, I would also recommend watch his movies because he's trying to copy other movies. All his movies are that. They're either a franchise film or they're trying to be other films. So watch his stuff and you will understand why other directors are better. Sometimes you have to watch a bad action movie to understand what makes a good action movie.
Exactly. It's an educational experience.
I mean, Jurassic World made me realize that Jurassic Park is like a great movie, honestly.
Did you not realize that before?
I always loved Jurassic Park, but I never could tell if it was just like my love for monster movies. And then Jurassic World was like, no, Jurassic Park is like genuinely, it's how to do a fucking movie. And Jurassic World is how to do it all wrong. I mean, holy fuck, man. God, we got to get him off Star Wars. I'm sorry, people, I'm derailing this, but we got to stop him. We got to do anything. Find any dirt on Colin Trevorrow ever. We have to get him off of Star Wars.
Apparently, he's a really nice guy.
I don't give a fuck. I mean, I really don't. And no offense, he might be a nice guy, but he's got something under the surface. Because all his movies have a genuine hatred of humanity in them. Like, it's below the surface. There's something going on in the back of his head. Any filmmaker, you get, like, you can't judge a guy based on his work. Like as much as I hate Zack Snyder, I do think Zack Snyder's a nice guy, and I just don't like his movies. You know, but Colin Trevorrow, there's something up there, man. There's something wrong. It's like I would be weirded out to be around him.
I
like don't leave me alone in a room with Colin Trevorrow.
I want to talk about Book of Henry after this because I have things to say. I don't want to derail this anymore.
I haven't seen it. I know what's in it. I haven't seen it.
It's the most amazing thing ever.
I will watch it, but not in theaters. I'll just wait. It's just, but fuck. Do you want to talk about how Jaws 2 is a slasher movie?
Yeah, that was I was trying to find a segue, but I had nothing, so thank you for that. So Jaws 2, there's this whole discussion that I was just recently introduced to, and that it helped set the stage for slasher movies after the 70s. And I think that's an interesting claim, because it has, like, it's all the tropes are there, the dumbass teenagers, the excessive amount of kills that don't really mean anything, the creativity in some of the kills, not visually, just in concept. Mm-hmm. But then this is also the same year Halloween came out, and it's not like slasher movies didn't exist before this. So I don't want to, like, just shoot down that debate and say, like, it's stupid. I just don't agree with it. I don't think Jaws 2 helped bring in anything, but I think it fits the bill for one.
Yeah, I think that argument's bullshit.
Okay.
No offense to the people making it, but I don't want to sound like too much of a dick. But it's not totally understanding either genre, or at least how they developed. Because Jaws 2 is a monster movie. A lot of the tropes of slasher films started with monster movies. You know, body count, all the stuff that we praise slasher films for started in monster films. Dumb teenagers, teenagers doing shit they shouldn't do and then getting killed. It's just, you know, when monster movies were out, there wasn't like excessive gore. And what scares audiences in the idea of a monster changes in the 70s. Monsters go from being actual monsters to being human beings. That's all slasher films really changed. Like, slasher films were like, let's do monster movies, but the monster's a human being. And that kind of started with Psycho, where it's like, here's a scary fucking human being. And then, you know, just got more and more ramped up as we get Texas Chainsaw and Black Christmas and Halloween. And it just became a new template. I mean, because suddenly we have to, all slasher movies are basically an offshoot of monster movies, I would argue. The key difference is that you have to explain the psychology of a slasher as opposed to a monster. A monster is usually driven by something very simple, like either just food, or it's like it's related to some sort of ancient curse or some bullshit, or it's nuclear radiation or something. But a slasher needs to be driven by something psychological, and so that's what differentiates the monster movie from the slasher movie. And so Jaws 2 is just a monster movie. And it hits all the monster movie tropes. It just happened to come out at a time when slasher films started to, come out.
And there you have it.
Yep, there you go. That's the slasher film debate. Interesting idea, but just watch monster movies. Watch all the shitty mummy movies from the 30s or 40s or whatever the fuck. They're all slasher films. Just with a mummy that just chokes people.
It's kind of a boring slasher thing.
It's boring as shit, but that's what it is. It's people being like, I don't believe in no mummy, and then the mummy kills them.
Yeah, and then in Jaws 2, there's not another shark out there, Brody. The shark killed a bunch of people. Fuck. What else is there even to talk about for this?
I don't know. I really don't. There's not much. Shark gets electrocuted. There's one girl in this movie that never stops screaming, and I wish that she died.
She lasts till the end.
Yeah, she gets rescued. She is one of two that is immediately rescued. The other two have to wait. Oh, wait, there's one really kind of fun scene in this movie, which is Jaws versus a fucking helicopter. That's actually a kind of fun moment.
I don't know. I don't think that's fun. I think the boat crashing is more fun.
I think it's a moment that maybe should have happened later in the franchise. Like when you're like, fuck it, now Jaws has superpowers. Like you have them like fucking fighting helicopters and fucking planes and shit. Like, but I like that it's, it's not just like when Jaws attacks that, the thing that sucks about that scene is that there should be tension leading up to it, but there's like absolutely none. It's just like a long, boring scene of this guy being like, okay, tie this around this. And then do this, and then I'll help you. And then there's like no feeling that the shark is going to pop out at any moment. You're just like, well, let's wait to see what happens. And then the shark does pop out and yanks under. And then the cool moment is just that when the propeller starts hitting the water, it starts shooting debris at the kids.
Oh, yeah, that was kind of cool.
It should have hit one of them, but whatever. So there's a fun moment, I guess.
I mean, that's also the thing in the movie, just like, oh yeah, that's cool, but this should have also happened to add tension.
Yeah. Also, one of the teenagers in it was in the movie Christine, so there's that.
Oh, which one? I don't even recognize.
One of the guys with glasses. He's just, I don't know, I don't remember the actor's name. He was in Christine. He's the guy who gets possessed by Christine.
Oh, cool.
So yeah,
there you go.
There's that movie.
There's Jaws 2. Sorry. Fuck.
I'm sorry you have to watch it if you did. You don't have to, I guess, but
yeah, no, you don't.
It's a good, if you want to understand filmmaking a little more, because I'm very much, I like, the thing I realized as I'm getting older, I like craft in movies a lot more than just like ideas. Like your movie can have very simple ideas, but if it's done really well, I'll like it. I don't need a movie that's trying to fucking conquer the universe and fail, which I think a lot of movies do. Or like a lot of critics today, and I use critics very lightly because it's usually guys with blogs, but they praise movies for having ideas in them. And I'm like, motherfucker, it doesn't matter what ideas are in the movie. It matters how you execute those ideas. And Jaws is a perfect example of executing all your ideas. Jaws 2 is an example of executing all your ideas poorly.
Yeah, they should do like, I mean, I'm sure someone in the planet has done this already, but do like a film class just on Jaws and Jaws 2. Like not an ongoing thing, just like present both of them. And then you could just break them down and look at what's right and what's so clearly wrong in between them.
No, there's a couple movies you could do with that, you know, like Jurassic Park and Jurassic World is probably that's probably better than this. I would really watch those two back to back, and you'll learn a lot.
I have more to say on Jurassic World because that ties into my Jaws 3 stuff.
Okay,
but so be on the lookout for that. At the time of recording, when these are released tomorrow. There you go.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Fuck. Oh my God.
We're in the middle of Shark Week. Oh, Michael Phelps was taken out by a shark. What a tragedy.
I bet he could outswim a shark.
I hope not. Why else would I watch?
Okay, well, Jaws...
It's like you go to the air show to see the plane crash.
All right, well, Jaws 2 sucks. Really quick, off the top of your head, what other shark movies would you recommend in place of Jaws 2? And that's not Jaws.
Oh.
That's not the first Jaws.
Oh, that's a tough one.
Okay, because I got
The Shallows.
Yes.
The Shallows, of course. Shark movies. Oh, Deep Blue Sea.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, Deep Blue Sea. Watch Deep Blue Sea. That's the dumb, fun sequel to Jaws that never happened. Like, it's dumb. It's very dumb, but it's a lot of fun. But it's like incredibly dumb. But it's a dumbness that you can get over. There's a lot of dumbness in other movies that are just roadblocks to entertainment. Yeah, so Deep Blue Sea, that's a good one. Also, check out Orca the Killer Whale. Not a shark movie, but...
It's kind of a shark movie, because it was clearly made just because of Jaws.
Oh, yeah, it was Dino De Laurentiis. Also, Dino De Laurentiis produced the 70s remake of King Kong because of Jaws. And his big thing was, they're like, why remake King Kong? And he's like, because in Jaws, nobody cry when the sharks die. In King Kong, everybody cry. And I was like, thanks, Dino. And both those movies kind of suck, but, you know. Orca's got a score by Ennio Morricone that's fucking awesome.
Oh, there you go. That's a reason to watch it.
And one of the most traumatic scenes of my childhood ever in it. There's a scene in Orca the Killer Whale where a baby orca fetus gets killed. I'm not making this up.
Oh.
And I saw this when I was 5. And a whale gives birth to a stillborn orca fetus. And they just show it happen. I saw this as a child. It's somewhere deep in my brain. It still haunts me. So check that out.
All right, watch Orca, not Jaws 2.
Watch Alligator. Alligator's awesome.
Okay, I think we're done here today, Matt.
I'm off the rails, but
Matt, where can the people find you?
Emperor OTN at twitter.com. Re-elect Mayor Vaughn.
Of course, you can find me on Twitter at President Diego, DEGGO Waffles. Writing at audiences everywhere. Yada yada. Links on Twitter. So many things. Continue with Shark Week. Links will be down below. There'll be a playlist probably set up too. Oh, this one was tiring. Not as fun as I hoped. The first job was fun. The next two will definitely be fun because those are fun disasters to talk about.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have a lot of fun talking about the fact that fucking SeaWorld agreed to make a horror movie in their park.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, yada yada. If you didn't like it, like and subscribe anyways, because you might find something you do like. We've been professionally unprofessional.
None of man's fantasies of evil can compare with the reality of Jaws.